I just wanted to talk quickly on the Pareto principle. I think this is a valuable piece of information worth increasing your level of awareness and worth you spending some time figuring out where and how can I apply it. It doesn't only apply to the manufacturing process. So I'm sure some of you are aware that this is also called the 80-20 rule, and it's often applied in Lean Six Sigma and often applied in a manufacturing process. But that's not the only area that you can use this in. You can use this for non-manufacturing related process. You can use it personally, professionally. You can use it at home. You can use it at developing your team, identifying defects, problems, opportunities to make things better. So this relates to basically continuous improvement mindset. And so I'm just going to spend a couple minutes going over just some high level topics on the Pareto principle. So number one, the Pareto principle, it's not a theory, it's an observation. It's an observation that is made related to causes or the effects or the results that you see. So basically, when you're looking at the results, you can apply the Pareto principle, glean that information, and figure out how can I leverage what I know or what I'm about to share with you related to the Pareto principle. Basically, what it says is that you can get or you do get predictable unbalance of small things having big results. So that the point of this is that you can do small things and get big results. And you want to focus on what are those small things. So you have to think, you have to use your mind, you have to pause, you have to slow down so that you can spend time identifying of all the things that I'm doing, what are the things that matter the most? So that I know the things that matter the least, I'm going to spend the least amount of time on them or no amount of time on them because I'm going to delegate this across to people who have the time and resources to do that. There is the next slide here is I think he was an officer, I think he was a General Erich von Manstein, that he said that there are only four types of officers. First, there are the lazy and the stupid ones. Leave them alone. They do no harm. Second, there are the hardworking, intelligent ones. They make excellent staff officers. These are basically, he's calling them middle managers, ensuring that every detail is properly considered. Third, there are the hardworking, stupid ones. These people are menace and must be fired at once. Now, I'm not suggesting that you fire anybody in your organization. I'm just reading what he says over here. And the reason he says fire them is because they create irrelevant work for everybody. These are the people, the bureaucrats. These are the people that consistently want to add another layer, another signature, another approval, another update to a work instruction or procedure. They keep adding and adding and adding, and they're never looking for ways of subtracting things. They only think in terms of adding things. And so they're just creating layers of unnecessary non-value added work, and eventually that takes its toll on your people, in your department, on your organization, and in your business. You lose a competitive edge when you let this get out of control. You shouldn't have any of it, but if you're going to have some of it, just have the least amount of this that you will tolerate. And then finally, there are the intelligent, lazy ones. These are suited for the high office. So if you look at this kind of graph that I have or chart on the right, he's basically breaking them down into the lazy and the hardworking. The lazy, you keep them.
11:30.
Because you can have the lazy that are either stupid, they're not causing any harm, or the lazy that are clever, and they're just figuring out what's the least amount of work that I need to do to get the job done. These are people that are focusing on the vital few, not the trivial many. These are people that are asking the question, what needs to be done? Not everything can be done, but they realize there are only certain things that need to get done that are most value added, and that's what they're trying to accomplish. Now, they might be what I call unconscious competent. They might not be thinking through all the things that I mentioned, but in terms of the results, that's what they're getting. So an unconscious competent means that they're competent, they're getting the job done, but they're not conscious of what they're thinking. They're not conscious of why they're thinking the way they're doing. They just have this habit of just let me figure out what it is that I need to do And I'm not going to worry about the other things. The other things are less important. The next slide basically is the same thing, just in a different format. So because this is a video, you can go ahead, take a screenshot and use it if you want. But basically it says the exact same information that I just communicated to you. And so when you look at the 80-20 rule, let's look at how you can apply it. So the 80-20 rule says that 80% of my manufacturing defects are coming from 20% of my process. 80% of my cases, 80% of my complaints, of my defects are coming from 20% of my products. 80% of the income earners or owners in the US are held by 20% of the population. 20% of the people earn 80% of the income that's made in the US. And this applies in the EU, applies in Russia, applies in China, applies anywhere. So these are general, these are not absolute. So you go look at data, you might find that, okay, it's 75% over here, it's 85%. So again, this is like a general rule, but they're saying that, all right, 20% of the income earners earn 80% of the wealth, 80% of the income that's being drawn in every year, every 5 years, every 10 years, any amount of time that you decide to aggregate data, you're going to see this. My top performers, 80% of the results that I have, favorable results from my team, are coming from 20% of my team. 80% of the headaches, 80% of the problems are coming from my bottom 20%. If you're selling real estate, 80% of what you do, of what matters the most, is coming from 20% of the activity. So if you have a process that has 100 steps, that means that 20%, 20 steps out of that 100 is giving you 80% of the value. The other 80 steps that you're taking only give you 20% of the value. If you're a coach, a speaker, a mentor, and you provide these one-on-one services, if you look at all the services that you provide, 20% of what you're doing is generating 80% of the value, the revenue of the value. Drug errors in the hospital. Drug administration errors are typically related to the same 20% of the errors. So 80% of the errors that we see that are drug-related errors are from these 20% of these causes. In hospital patient falls, when you look at all the patient falls that occur in a hospital, 80% of them are due to this 20% of the cause, 20% of this root cause. You want to focus on that. Surgical errors, operating on the wrong site. Now, this is hospital dependent, but when you look at the data, same thing applies. 80% of the wrong site surgical errors that occur are from the same 20% of the defect. It might be failure to mark the arm before the surgery with a marker. It might be failure to confirm with the patient, but they generally work out to be the same 20%. And then the last two examples that I'm going to use is look at your home. 80% of the time is spent in 20% of your rooms. So if you have a home with multiple rooms and you start to think about it, in general, 80% of the time is spent in the same room. It might be the kitchen and the living room, kitchen and the family room. But that's generally true, flushes out to be generally true. And then the same thing with your furniture in your home. 80% of the time, you're going to sit on the same chair. You're going to sit in the same location, on the same couch. You spend most of your time. So when you're going to buy your favorite chair, make sure that it is your favorite chair, because you're going to spend 80% of the time on that one chair. So that's kind of like 80-20 rule, how it applies. So what are some of the takeaways from this is that you're trying to recognize the vital few from the trivial many. There are many things that have to be done, but only few things matter the most. Slower is faster. So asking people to go faster, work harder is not a solution. Asking people to step back, let's slow down, let's look at what you're doing so we can identify and isolate which steps. Remember, 80-20 rule. If you have 100 steps in your process, 20% of those steps are giving you 80% of the value. If you have multiple fields in a record, that means 80% of your defects, of your problems, are coming from the same 20%. Isolate them and work on them. You want to do more with less. So this is not more work with less people, but you want to accomplish more by focusing on less, and it's really focusing on the things that matter the most. So you want to say no to the things that matter the least, so I can say yes to the things that matter the most. I'm going to spend my energy, I'm going to spend my time on those 20% of the fields, 20% of my products, 20% of the things that I do that are giving me the 80% of the value. When I've identified what those areas are, I'm going to focus on kind of calling them out so I can repeat them. If I look at my employees, if I know that 20% of my people are giving me 80% of the value, I'm going to single them out. I'm going to meet with them and say, hey, what is it that you're doing that makes you so successful? What is it that you're doing that's giving you this high level of success, a high level of productivity? So then I can take those learnings and share them with the other 80% of the people that are not doing as well. So this is how I can develop them, grow them, pour into them, not punish them, not fire them, but basically spend time in terms of helping them grow. And then I said, focus on the big bar. So imagine you have a Pareto bar, you've isolated the data, focus on the big bar. The big bar, or the top two big bars in general, not always, but in general, they amount to 20% of your defects, or 20% of the steps in your process that are creating 80% of your defects. So focus on the big bars. Now, I'm sure one of you or some of you are thinking, well, Rich, there's these other bars that, they need to triage, they need to be prioritized, and they need to come first. You can't be ignored. I didn't say that. But when that question comes up, almost 100% of the time, it means or suggests that you did not separate your data properly. It means that if you have serious and non-serious item mixed in, then you need to break them apart so you can apply the 80-20 rule there as well. And then finally, I end with reiterate what matters most. So when you look at the 80-20 rule, if I decide it's 80-20 rule is also a power law. That means you can apply it to itself, so that if I know that 20% of my activities are creating 80% of the favorable results, if I take 20% of that 20%, which is 4%, and 80% of 80%, which is 64%, if I apply the 80-20 rule onto itself, I can then turn around and say, all right, now that I focus on this big bar, and I've isolated the 20 steps that give me the favorable results, if I look at the 20% of those steps are going to give me 64% of the results, then basically I'm looking for 4 steps. That means that 4 steps out of 100 are going to give me over 50% of the favorable results. 64% is the actual number. And the same thing with your defects. Once you've isolated that big bar, that big bucket, and you found out that, okay, 20% of the steps in my process are creating 80% of my defects, now you can drill down on that big bar, that big bucket, if you're looking at a histogram chart, a bar chart, and you can focus and say, all right, 4%, 4 steps out of 100 are creating 50% to 64% of my defects. So go back and listen to this a couple more times, because it really is valuable information. It really helps you focus. It really helps you triage. It really helps you add significant value to your team, significant value to your business, small, medium, and large, because you can save a considerable amount of money when you learn how to apply this. There are too many steps that you have in your process, and many of those steps add no value, add very little value. So again, you're looking for the vital few, so this way you can spend less time or no time on the trivial many. So this is Rich Arriaga. I hope this is helpful. Have a great day.